Everything I've been in has been full so far, so I half expected this. I'm going to try not fill this up with slides. I do have a lot of slides, but I'm going to try not to fill this up with slides. I'll explain what I've been trying to do for about 10-15 minutes. And then, can you hear me? We'll stop for some questions. With this many people, we can't really break out into groups and discuss, but I'll stop for some questions. And then we'll carry on after that with what I'm going to try and do. So a bit of an emphasis on the Agile values and loaded term in the second half of this, hyper-productive teams, which is what a nice idea. So my original title for this was easy to understand yet difficult to do. Alan Kelly got back to me and said, well, that title sounds a bit like just another Scrum talk. So we came up with giving education a kick. Scrum will be education a kick. So, and it has done that with the course I deliver, manage. Scrum has done this. So an alternative title. I'm going to try and get, as has been done a few times before, some idea of who you are. So the type of industry you're in. Most people in the software industry here? Anybody not in the software industry? What about level of experience with Scrum? Could do a 0 to 6 months, 2 years, etc. What about 0 to 6 months? That's interesting. You do get an impression from this conference that everybody knows an awful lot about Scrum and Agile, but
Scrum isn't necessarily all Agile.
yeah. Sorry, I'll use
Must bypass it.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. What about a lot of experience, 1 to 5 years of experience? Okay. This is me, 12 years, delivering a foundation degree. My start on this was, we had an initiative where I work to try and interact with industry more. At the end of that, somebody said, there's some funding if you want to go on some courses. And I knew I had to update the group project management module that I teach. So I looked for some courses and found a course by, and I didn't know who he was at the time, Jeff Sutherland in London. So I went on to London for 2 days, and I didn't watch the language really, but it's the biggest load of common sense I've heard in ages. You're probably sat there and you've got a little antenna going up. Now, what's this going to be like? I went along with that attitude, almost ready to be disappointed, but hoping to get some information that I could take back and update. But there was something there, there was definitely something there. Got back to work, got stuck into work again, but this wouldn't go away. It stayed, it kept on coming back. So I got to the summer, and I looked back at it, and trawled YouTube for all those Scrum videos, and started to implement it. It was a case of, this is right. This is right. This is the right way to do things. This tallies with the things that people, when they're in work, say, well, why don't they do it like that? It's obvious they should do it like that. It tallied with my experience. So I'm going to do this. That was it. That was the mindset. I'm going to do this. I know there are going to be barriers, but I'm going to do this. So I introduced it in September 2007. Then I went on product owner training, and then I went on developer training. I teach, so this is about the management of an educational course, but I also have embedded it in the course now. There's a lot of Scrum in a lot of the modules that the students see. A refresher of the Scrum diagram. So, and I'll deliberately I'll step back, or try to. So we have a product backlog, a list of things to do. And we'll work in 2 or 4 week iterations, and we'll take some of that list and we'll do some planning, work out the complexity, and work through them. And if it's cool, probably ideally using XP. And every day we'll have a stand up and talk about what we did yesterday, what we're going to do today, and anything in our way. And the ScrumMaster will get rid of the stuff that's in the way, and the product owner will interact with, back to the keynote, product owner will interact with people from outside. At the end, well, at the end of each sprint, we'll look back and ideally things will have been done and it'll be releasable, and right at the end we'll have a retrospective. Quick overview of Scrum. So we have product owners, Scrum Masters, team, meetings, retrospectives. How do I introduce this? You have to be very careful when you're changing education courses. The software is the legacy flavor of the month, and that'll disappear. So you can't just keep on introducing what the new flavor of the month is. Something has to have some legs for you to be able to put that into a course. The education of students is at stake. No, that's a break on change, really. So, does this diagram have legs? Well, dug into it. Takeuchi and Nanaka, godfathers of Scrum, as Jeff Sutherland calls them. Visiting professor at Harvard for a while, Nanaka. Looking good. Tacit knowledge. Knowledge that's inside our heads. We want that information to be, that knowledge to be in the organization. This is his field. Knowledge creation. This is looking good. And we'll talk about it a little bit later, his idea of bar, which is the knowledge space. This is a cycle. In education is full of Kolb, an experiential learning. Do, reflect, make sure you've got the theory, do some experimentation. Those 4 make for a real learning experience. Kolb argues, and it's a theory, but he argues that any one of those is missing, then it's not a rich education experience. Education's full of that. Shown reflective practitioner. We reflect here. We reflect here. Send, the learning organization. Continually learning new things. And there's systems theory in here. There's complex adaptive systems in here. And see the big pictures, get the holistic view. Feedback cycles, these are feedback cycles. Really important from a systems point of view. not a static thing, it's an active thing. And lean manufacturing, you look into the history of this connection with lean, once again, that's heavyweight theory. So one definition of that diagram is the distillation of the best practices of the last 50 years of project management. But easy to understand. Yeah? So can I use this? Can I justify using this in an educational setting? Absolutely. This ties in with a lot of what we already do in education. Let's talk about these. There's also this, I should be teaching this. This is what we should be doing. So I'm going to introduce Scrum. How did I do it? Very carefully. Similar to Google AdWords. I don't know if you know the story about how they introduced Scrum to Google AdWords. New project manager went into Google with the AdWords team, and I'm just passing on a story that I've heard, but realised that he wasn't going to be able to go in and say, okay, now we're going to do Scrum. So he waited, and somebody came back and came up with a problem, and he said, well, why don't we have some whiteboards? Somebody came back a little bit later, well, we've got this problem. Well, what if we have some cards on the whiteboard, and we'll call them user stories? And a little bit later, well, we've got this problem. People are working on the same thing. Well, let's have a little meeting at the beginning of the day. And at a certain point, you say, well, what we're doing is Scrum. And if he'd done that up front, what he believed was that wasn't going to work. It's going to be, this is the way we do things, don't impose this on us. So that's the way I try to introduce this. So I'm going to introduce this, so what do we already have? Well, heavy workload. Yeah, absolutely. Frequent changes, absolutely. Strict deadlines. When you got your degree, all that marking had to be done, all that marking had to be on the system. You needed to go through the whole system. Your work had to be marked on time, and so on. There are strict deadlines. But we also had a dysfunctional team. The lecture culture in education is individualistic. This is my subject. Don't step on my toes. Yeah? But it's interesting when you look around and see what you've already got, there are a lot of positives. We did have a team of lecturers, although we had lecturers. You know what I'm saying? Interesting, who are the users in this whole bit? Well, the users are the students on the course. From my point of view, my customers are the people who are asking me to do things. Students are the users. So we've got users. We're going to try and map this system over. Time box activities, the assessment, marking, turnaround. You've all been students, I would think. For you, an assignment is, it got handed out, you did the work, you handed the assignment in, and that was done. From a lecturer point of view, assignment gets written, assignment is verified by somebody else. Assignment is handed out to students. Assignment is explained to the students. Students do it, receive assignment back, mark it. That piece of work gets second marked. External examiner looks at that piece of work. That mark goes on the system. gets ratified by a board for at the end of the year. That's done from a piece of paper. Splitting user stories comes into there somewhere. Meetings in Scrum, well, we have meetings. We have a program committee meeting where we look at problems on the course, we'll try to bring in improvements. So we've got a team, we've got meetings. A subject assessment panel, we look at all the separate modules in detail. And I said we had a team of sorts. At the time, 2 team meetings a year, if we were lucky. Heavy workload, very busy, a culture of, well, I'll talk about it in a minute, but don't ask me to come to meetings if they're going to be a waste of time. There was that culture, which is fair enough. Our customers, all of these people ask me for things. They provide tasks to do. So the faculty I'm in, I have to go through, this is a bit of, this sets the scene really. There's a blended learning coordinator on technology, let's get blended learning into the course. And there's an HE coordinator who's giving us jobs to do. And there's an external examiner who comes up with suggestions to improve things. So the requirements, what we're going to fill the backlog with, are what they're tasking me to do. So there's an action plan from that meeting, there's an action plan from that meeting, an external examiner will fill in a report and make some recommendations. These all became user stories. These fill up the backlog. And things change regularly. Paperwork changes regularly, year by year. And as a program manager, I also want to change the course. I also want to keep up with things. So the backlog generated from both sources. Verification, are we doing the right thing? Validation, did we do it? These are some of the user stories that filled up the backlog. I do have screenshots, but I found it very difficult to take screenshots of the boards in the room and get actually a decent screenshot. So more maths on the course to give rigour, improve people's employment prospects. More blended learning. There's a movement at the moment of trying to give students the opportunity to become researchers very early on. So don't wait till the masters, don't wait for the PhD. Get students doing research from the first year. So that was a new requirement in that year. User story. Internships, we're encouraging internships now. Another user story. Module reviews, try and get them completed as well as possible. Another user story. Keeping modules current, another user story. Update the VLE so students can access them from anywhere, another user story. So to start with, surreptitiously trying to introduce Scrum, started with stand-up. Daily is going to be impossible. It's a dispersed team in the same room. So people on the team teach on other courses as well. They don't purely teach on this course. We had to change it 3 different times last year. Difficult. Is that Scrum bugged? I asked myself. Problems to begin with, breaking up user stories into enough detail, aligning the stand-up with the board, and the balance of course management is a meeting with, well, we're here to teach the students. We want to get the job done. And any meetings get in the way of that. I suspect those are common problems when anybody introduces stand-ups. Some interesting, what you could call war stories. So, trying to introduce stand-ups. I'm going to have to stand up tomorrow morning. I don't think I can make it. In that case, that means no. That's what happened. But I wasn't going to go away. Okay, can you make it tomorrow? I don't think I can make it tomorrow. Okay, when can you make it? The point being, I'm going to change this meeting. We're going to have this meeting when you and everybody else is going to make it. I'm not going to go away. We are going to do this. So we got going, got past that, got going. People understood that, you know, I was determined to make this happen. And then we had a little bit of this from one individual. And that's to stand up, like I'm sitting down. It's more of that, but it comes from some understanding here. Comes from a culture of we've been in useless meetings before, as I've said. I understand that. So some comments from the team. Stand-up meetings were seen by many of the other team members as being a nuisance to start with. As the period continued, we started to feel the usefulness of collaboration. Something's starting to happen here. Short discussion on what we were all doing allowed us to find common ground, a possible sharing of ideas. Something started to happen. Bringing these details to mind and gradually ensuring they got done did reap benefits with a more trouble-free end of the year. That maps to software, it maps to partly why Scrum came in to avoid that, the whole continuous integration, etc., etc., etc. So, why this not full acceptance of Scrum? Overworked, frustrated lecturers who want to do a good job and don't put a system in that's going to stop me doing a good job. That was where they were coming from. There is quite an interesting principle. I won't unpack this, but this one can simmer. Good people do bad things. Good people do bad things. It's easier to just think that person's bad or that person's good. Good people do bad things. So, stand-ups, we're working, team is starting to form, and I didn't really clarify those user stories, but those user stories were on the backlog, we were working through them. Verification was done. Validation was done. Module reviews were done. External examiner requests were done. Students becoming researchers were done. Formation of the team. I didn't have to create a team. I found that this creates a team. Done. Introduction of Scrum created the team. So, Scrum introduces underlying methodology, of course, done. We'll stop in a second, I'll ask for some feedback, but this was stand-up, an attempt at sprint reviews and sprint planning. Retrospectives we're good at. Even badly implemented Scrum worked. I knew the theory, I knew what I tried to implement. We got there with still a partly dysfunctional team, but here was the proof for me. Even badly implemented Scrum worked. Dun 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 dun. There's an interesting change in the staff workroom. The vocabulary has changed, although there's still people that don't want to admit it. The word "get done" gets used an awful lot now. It's quite interesting. As soon as I described the boards as an information radiator, it was like a light went on in people's minds. They could see what these were doing. And user stories, there was somebody putting all these sticky notes on their screen the other day. You know, it's just a little bit broader. So this is success. The real success of education is, there's a lot of definitions, this is my definition really, the amount and quality of a student's learning. The amount of their learning, but also the quality. And, you know, you'll see this in the Scrum books, I think. Get stuff done, but you want quality as well. Don't just get it done. So, let's skip the refactoring, it works. In education also, we have this term value added. The stats count. For everybody on the modules I teach, we're getting thirds. It will come back to me. Results matter in education from our perspective. But this really matters. So, here's a diagram again. Now, product backlog fed by the action plans from the program committee, the external examiner, student feedback, course development. This is where I'm moving to. Project-based, 6-termly sprints. Sprint planning, we'll work through every half term. Take these, prioritize them, put them onto here, but fed from all these tasks that are, in any organisation, I think, there's somebody here, most organisations are still hierarchical, and there's somebody up there asking this person down here to do work, and it's their job to do work. So, I'm going to, I've talked for, I think, quite a long time. If we take 5 minutes now, some questions, some thoughts, some feedback on whatever, but even badly implemented Scrum work, that's one we can go to. Is it better to keep a dysfunctional system or face the dangers of change? Any comments so far?
So what you described is kind of seems to be mostly around the management and the background tasks that you have as a lecturer. Did you try and implement this into the actual teaching of the course as well? In terms of a backlog of all the lessons you have to deliver to the students, that kind of stuff.
I was going to go there later. That's it's a big question, that. Yeah. We'll go there. If we start running out of time, we'll make sure we get that. I'm not avoiding.
Are other departments in the university liking the way you work and think they could start working using Scrum even though they're not actually teaching computing?
People who run other courses from the same room that I'm in, there's almost a little feeling of we don't want to admit that this is good. That's where the there's a but at the same time that vocabulary is changing, and people come in and they look at the board and they think that's interesting, I'll use that. There's that's going on, I mean, they maybe they don't want to call it Scrum. They want to. I think they want to own the idea, which is fair enough. I mean, let's this doesn't. Scrum doesn't belong to the software industry. Those influences, they're wider business, lean, etc. So that's fed into Scrum. This bubble, but this is just one example of taking it back out again, really. So we can go above the diagram counts, absolutely. I don't think you mess with the diagram, and if you take one piece out of that diagram, then the whole thing becomes weak. But people are interested, and what results have for students. Somebody said to me in my appraisal, well, how does this help the students? And I said if the course is managed really efficiently, that has to help the students. You know, if you're on a course and it's managed badly, your experience as a student isn't going to be as good as if you're on a course that is managed really, really efficiently, because it gives efficient management. So people are interested, yeah. Did that answer the question?
Yeah, I was just intrigued.
Yeah.
And then I was wondering whether you shared it with other universities and things, whether it's...
I gave a bit of a talk, just a little bit of a talk at a Scrum gathering in London a couple of years ago. And people are interested. You know, it's partly why I thought we'd stop for questions, because we've all been in education. This is all, you've probably got youngsters in education, so this relates, to everybody. Nobody's gone, that's great, I'm going to do that. Nobody's gone there. But the results are coming through.
Yeah.
The number of firsts and 2-1s from the course I managed has been up the last 2 years. And I go to meetings where all the paperwork has to be done, etc., and that paperwork is done. So that's having an effect. So if people ask, well, Martin, that'll be done, no problem. Anybody ask me why? People get a bit fed up now with their Scrum, isn't it?
Prioritize the user stories and identifies the stories that will make it the sprint.
Bit contentious, really. I'm the product owner on the ScrumMaster. These must. It's not an ideal word.
Martin, we're interested in the learning element of all this, and I think hear you say that you're good at retrospectives or that element. Are you going to talk more about that, or could you say something about how you do that?
We naturally get together. There's the whiteboard. I've introduced retrospectives to the students end of every half term. I give them stickies. I say one good, one bad. And they come up, put them on the board, we have 2 lists, and they know they've got to expand on it. So every half term, I'm getting an idea of how to improve the course. And so with the lecturers, we do the same. So at the end of the year, bring it up, and it usually, one thing boils up, and that's the thing we're going to implement in the next year. It's quite difficult in education. If you don't make changes before the teaching starts, I'm not saying teachers are any different than your job, but once the teaching starts, your feet don't touch the ground, basically. So you've got to have, if you're going to introduce something, you've got to introduce it before the teaching starts. So run the retrospective at the end. You've got to put that in place now for next year. But that's what we do. But I suppose the quality of the retrospective is these are lecturers. They're used to thinking about things, analysing things. They've got their own take on how this could be improved, and this individualistic culture. So everybody's a leader, everybody would like to be headmaster, maybe, I'm being a bit, there's an element of that. Everybody knows the best way to run an education.
We recently have had some meetings about kind of innovations that may be happening moving forward, and education was one of the subjects that was brought up as a primary part of that, and how the education system isn't necessarily giving all of the skills to the students for the progressions that are happening. I mean, look at the attendance of this event and how many software companies that there are out there that are potentially adopting agile processes. Do you think that maybe if the students were taught agile processes, that would give them an added value or an added benefit at the end of their course as an additional skill that they can take forward along with what they've been taught? Does that make sense?
When I was at Scrum London, I was speaking to somebody who coaches, does training courses in an organisation. When graduates come into the organisation, it was her job to spend, I think it was 6 weeks, training them up in Scrum. Student last year has just got a job, I can't remember, it's up in Milton Keynes. He got a first, one of the top 100 companies in Little Barnstable. And he said that's great because it's Java and it's Scrum. Another student this year has just got a placement. We do group project, Scrum. I'll go back, start teaching on the 16th for the second years. All of Monday is going to be, let's just do group project today. This is going to feed into everything else. It'll be Scrum. So another student has just got a placement with the Land Registry in Plymouth, opposite Derford Hospital. I said Land Registry implemented Scrum, started implementing Scrum 2 or 3 months ago. He already knows it, he's been doing it for a year. So it's got to help, isn't it? It's got to help. And it's good for me because I know people are going out there. You know, I'm preparing people for it. They're going to be out there and they're not going to be going, Scrum, what's this? Which is part of why I realised I had to do it in the first place.
Mine's quite a low level sort of mechanics question really. Your stories, your user stories seem to be quite sizable. So I was wondering how you explode them into tasks and how you estimate them and how you sort of delineate, how you separate those tasks out by priority. What yours are.
Yeah, they're funny. They when I was explaining the assignments and that whole thing of done, actually posting the assignment mark onto the VLE is a 1. Yeah. Second marking, depending on the assignment, is a 2 or 3. Marking can be an 8 or doing the Fibonacci yet. Marking is an 8 or a 13. So yeah, we do break them down, but it doesn't completely fit. It doesn't completely fit, but working on it. But this is work. As the last slide is work in progress. You know, this is a.
Yeah, because I was thinking this that I thought it would be a really tricky thing to do. I thought you've got a lot of different interests and different expertises that you've got to rely on to get those estimates and make those fragments. But I think if you do get it sussed out, then this is something that can bring Scrum into education, can't it?
Yeah.
As in, you need a new standard.
I mean, where those do work, if there's a user story for students as researchers, so on the VLE for each module, there needs to be so many academic papers, then if that wasn't in the user story, the teaching would take over, and that would be forgotten. And the end of year meeting, when we're looking at what we were going to do, it would have been, oh, that got pushed to one side, because things will get pushed to one side, because here are these 30 or 15 bodies in front of you, you know, you need to come up with a food.
Yeah.
Use one analogy. And it's, as I say, once it starts, it doesn't stop.
It's working.
Just one more, and then we move on to review.
So if Scrum's working, why do you think it's implemented badly?
Because we still had we'll move on to this as well. We've still got relatively what I would call dysfunctional team, although it's a lot better, and we're not good at sprint planning and sprint reviews. We're good at retrospectives, and people are really used to the board and moving tickets. We're good at done sometimes. That's my definition of planning. Just 10 minutes, okay. So where are we going? Hopefully, hyper-productive. Maybe I'll talk a little bit about the values first. Students last year, group project was Fridays, and I got students to email me. You can't give marks for, you can't enforce attendance at degree level, so, but at the end of Friday, students had to send me an email on their progress with the project, and there were marks for that email, and the focus of those emails were the Agile values. So it's a way of getting the Agile values into the students. I'm going to try and write a paper on that. I've got done with the written allowances to use their comments. So hyper-productive, on definition, done. and efficient management of the backlog, so when previous sprints are done, the tasks are ready. This really interests me. This is Jeff Sutherland from, you can see the video on YouTube, The Secret Sauce. He talks about the first Scrum team and how it absolutely took off, and how they've been trying to recapture that ever since. Now this is going to be up there, but I'm happy with it. The cosmic principle, how to get to a hyper-productive state. So, it's dependent on not doing. And the components being in alignment. HCI principle, take away, take away, take away, take away, take away. My next step is to try and create space in the course for the learning to happen. So the second half of that, but have a modular structure. We have modules. One of the problems of the course, I think, this is arguable, but you know, this whole thing of, and you hear when people talk on the news about primary schools, secondary schools, well, none of the lessons on chemistry, none of the lessons on maths, none of the lessons on English, etc., etc. But we have that modular structure. Make changes to the system by refactoring, and the architecture emerges. Contention here, design up front, etc. Choose backlog tasks that will maximise the evolutionary ripple effect. What he's talking about is how, in that first Scrum team, they were their tasks, and this is his story. They got 3/4 way through, and all of a sudden realised the tickets were going bang, done, bang, done, bang, done, bang, done. Now I think, I don't know, but I think maybe the initial stories, they were creating APIs, and by the end, well, we've got that, just use that method, we'll just pass the parameters, use that method, use that method, use that. But that's, even if it wasn't API, it sounds like we could do that. But that is getting things in alignment, getting things in the right order, rather than this rush to get things done. Let's stand back, have a bit of a think about this. It's a very good video. Very good video. Jeff Sutherland. It's tempting that, isn't it? You know, I mean, I want to get there. Work intelligently so that what you're doing now is having a massive effect on the user stories that we're coming to. So, the effect of this, the effect of Scrum, hopefully, restructure, restructure, restructure. So, closer alignment to industry, we're getting internships in. Each half term, it's going to do the course this is where I'm trying to go now. Each half term is going to be a specific project, sprint planning, sprint review with the students. This is, I'd like to ask your advice on this. When you did a degree, would this have worked for you? Could I put all the assignments up that the students are going to have to do in the year? I think this comes back to your question now. And so the students can just pull from the backlog. How do I organise the course? Just one backlog? There's the assignments. Students pull. 5 minutes, 5 minutes. So, this is where I'm trying to get to now. I want students to move to a hyper-productive state. So they are really efficient, maximise the learning. It's all about the student's education, always is. And, you know, this is a phrase, but create an iPhone user experience. You know, you remember your degree was probably bits of good, bits of bad. Well, it'd be great if students could leave the course going with the same feeling that you get from your Apple stuff. And I want the team to move to a hyper-productive state, so we're still trying to get there. Can it be applied to learning? I think so. I think so. This is Scrum applied to learning now, not just the management of the course, but A little bit more on Nanaka, one of the theorists at the start. This is his idea of a shared space that serves as a foundation for knowledge creation. That's physical space, but also mental space and interaction with the rest of the team. Shared space. I think you know when that happens. That's to do with being in the zone, bouncing ideas off the people. When you come at a certain, it was rich that. That's Baz' idea. That's Nanaka's idea of the workplace, team, or project. But if I can generate that in the classroom, ideal. As we're at a time. A lot of Scrum, that stand-up meeting, you can sort of criticise yourself, stand-up meeting, weekly, daily, can we do it well? So the principle behind that is the principle, and all those the meetings and the feedback, the highest performing software team that Copley found, and the Scrum originators looked at this paper. Principle behind it, why they wrote code so quickly, outperformed lots of other people, was the principle of communication saturation. That's what the meetings are about, really. So take it up to that level. That's the purpose. Communication saturation. There's the values. Respect for the worth of every person, truth in every communication, transparency of all data, actions and decisions, trust that each person will support the team, but also commitment to the team as the team's goals. Try and get those working, and things should not be nice and smooth, because we don't like this. I think that's right. Openness. No, knowledge is power. That stuff, it's ingrained in us. So, if people do start being open, then that should cause, this comes along with the values, healthy conflict. Healthy conflict. So, that's what the finish should be like. And I think that's what I was getting with the user story from the first one. Healthy conflict. I was worried about that. No, that's good. I'll leave you with this quote. This always works for me, so I'll just leave you with that quote if you can read it. Good sentence. Are we there? I like that. Are we there? Work in progress. It's always a work in progress. It never ends. Never ends. Scrum uncovers. Yeah? Thanks.
Martin, that was brilliant. Thank you very much. Lunch awaits. However, if you've still got questions, do you want a couple of minutes for questions, or do you want to take them with Martin separately? We'll do it separately. So enjoy your lunch, everybody. A massive thank you to Martin.